Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast track personal growth, improve lives, and empower parents, and also save relationships, families, and marriages. So, on the Nurturing Astrology podcast, I will offer practical guidance for applying astrology to all of these important areas of life. I'll offer insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to get started. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your host and astrologer. I'm here for another Circle Talk chat with Cornelia Hansen. Hi, Cornelia. Welcome back.
Hi.
We are going to dive into another fun topic, this time around the parental axis. So the 4th and 10th house polarity is called the parental axis. We did a great show on polarity, so definitely check that out in terms of all the polarities in relationship around the zodiac wheel. But we wanted to go a little deeper for our parents today, specifically about the 4th and 10th house polarity, the parental axis. So we'll go into this a little bit more in terms of mom and dad, but ultimately just for like chart logistics, the parental axis is the 4th and 10th house. And when you look at this for your child, it is your child's experience of being parented. So we can look at our own chart, the parental axis, to sort of reflect back on our own childhood, to sort of get a little confirmation about this. But just for parents with children, young children now, recognizing and understanding the parental axis can really be helpful in understanding how our children perceive us as parents, even if we think we're doing it one way or the other. Right?
Exactly.
So go into the parental axis and who represents what, Cornelia, because I know there's a lot of controversy about who's on the 4th, mom, dad on the 10th, and the opposite. We believe it's both, but dive into that a little bit and explain to everybody about that.
I think it goes back to ancient times where they thought either the father represented the 10th because he provides the structure and the mother provided the nurturing. That's the way it used to be. The way I think of it, though, is as we talked about when we're doing with polarities, that one side represents, the 4th house represents the nurturing we receive as babies because we're born at the ascendant. But those first 2 years is that nest that we're in, where all these important things happen, like learning to bond to mother or whoever the caretaker is, learning to bond to other people, learning, can we trust the environment or not trust the environment? Are we getting everything, all our needs met or not? So all these important processes are happening. So I look at the 4th house as, in psychology at least, it's the foundation of development. And each stage, you need to conquer the skills in that particular stage. Like the 4th house, this is the baby's learning sensory motor skills. Okay. The 10th house is how we discipline our children. How do we set boundaries with them? Do we set boundaries with them? All right. Because setting boundaries is just as important, because the child otherwise will grow up to be a total narcissist and not care about people's boundaries.
Right.
So we don't want that. So, and also the 10th house represents the parenting skills from your culture, because every culture has a different set of rules for how you treat a baby. You know, is he going to be breastfed or fed into the bottle? How is he going to be toilet trained? All of these things come from the culture. So however you got it from your parents, you'll probably do the same thing, unless you didn't like what you got, then you're going to do the opposite thing. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the issues. So looking at the signs on these two, and we know, learning about polarities, that we have to balance them. Okay. So we don't want to have too much nurturing without boundaries. You have a narcissist. Okay. We don't want to have too little nurturing and too many boundaries. That's the authoritarian type, it's my way or the highway. So we want to balance out, make sure that the kid is in an environment where he's feeling loved and he can trust the environment and he's bonding well with other people. But he also needs to learn, especially when he moves into the 2-year and he gets to the first 7th house. Now the boundaries come out. Okay, what can I do? What can't I do? This is where the child says no, or the parents are saying no, you can't do this. Okay, so now you get the idea of we're taking the parenting axis, nurturing versus discipline, and we're putting the different signs on them to see what issues are going to be related to the parenting axis.
Got it. Okay, cool. So when there's too much nurturing, there can be overprotection, intrusive behavior, too responsive to the child's needs. So they don't learn life skills. They don't learn to consider other people's needs and feelings. And then when there's too little nurturing, there's emotional distance and not enough involvement. The child doesn't feel loved and supported, and they're not able to develop trust in other people.
Right.
So then when there's too much structure, there's too much controlling or rigidity, harsh discipline, or the children don't learn to think for themselves. And they either become passive or they rebel.
Right.
Shut down or rebel. And then while if there's too little structure, expectations are unclear and inconsistent. So the children feel confused and unsafe and don't learn to be responsible and accountable. Right. So these are some things to keep in mind as we go through each one. And Arroyo in his book says that the elements of the parenting axis can be, have a negative and positive side. So that if you look at the element of the 4th house and 10th house environment, so the elements are in harmony, the two people can feed off each other well. And if they're in opposites, there may be issues.
If you're looking at the child, does the child fit into the environment? His first environment is the 2nd house. So if you've got a fire air child and he's got a 4th house that's all water, he's going to feel like the water's putting him out. He's not exactly going to quite fit. But then, it becomes more complicated because you still have to look at the rulers, where the rulers are, what planets are in the 4th house. All of these things, you can't take it out and say it all by itself. We can talk about it like it's by itself. But of course, when you're doing an individual's chart, you have to take all of those things in consideration. For instance, the rulers of the 4th, 10th, are they in a harmony or are they in conflict? Maybe the parents have different parenting ideas about how the child should be raised. Maybe they come from different cultures. If they're in harmony, then probably that works out just fine.
Right, exactly. You have to look at the whole picture. This is literally just giving a little bit of general information about the concept of nurturing too much or too little, structuring too much, too little, in the child's perception of that based on their 4th and 10th house cusp polarity there, that axis. And also then next looking to the planets that rule those signs and what are they doing for additional deeper insight. Where are they at? So this is just sort of like step 1, getting an idea or an essence of what this axis is and how they perceive you as parents and your role.
Right. And we shouldn't look at that negatively too, because if you understand the child's temperament, let's say you've got a fire air child that's just, get up and go and wants to do things, and he's got a Capricorn on the 10th house. Well, he perceives that people are trying to restrain him with all that energy that he's got, sit down, be still, that's how he's perceiving it, because he is all this fire air. And so he's perceiving a lot of structure as being not good for him. Okay, so it's not what you're doing wrong, it's just how he perceives it.
Right, exactly. I think that's a really good point, is that it's not that you're parenting wrong, doing something wrong, it's simply the way the child perceives it.
Right.
Right. And it's not, so if you recognize that your child might perceive you, if he is this air fire and he has Capricorn there and he perceives you as limiting, then you can say, okay, I know he might perceive me as wanting to put out his fire. So what can I do? I can make sure to structure enough free time for him to go and run and have that and not put out that fire, and recognize that when he handles certain responsibilities, he then has the freedom to do that, and that this is an exchange, and this is how you earn that free time and that ability to go and do like you like. We have all responsibilities in life, and you're going to have it when you're older, and you're showing them when they're younger how to have responsibility so they can have that freedom. So that would be my interpretation of how to help a parent say, well, if my child perceives me that way, what can I do?
Right.
That would be some practical guidance of how you could adjust. Right?
Yes, that's why it's so important to know the elements and understand your child's temperament, because you can adjust yourself because you're the adult. Right. And then you can also teach them what they need to learn.
Right. I love it. Okay, so let's dive into each sign polarity on the fourth house cuts on the parental axis. We're just going to focus on that for this topic. So do you want to just keep going with the Aries Libra axis on the fourth house?
Right. This is a good follow-up because the last time we talked about the polarities and how they work on each sign. So here we're talking how it works on parenting styles, which you need to know about, right? So when you have an Aries Libra axis on the 4th and 10th, what does that mean? Well, the issues are going to be around identity, about independence versus dependence, being assertive or accommodating, and that's Libra accommodating. Anger or placating behavior can dominate the parenting. Okay, so let's look at, let's say you have Aries on the 4th house. This is where we build security. And security here, it means that you have to have freedom. The child needs to have space, freedom to be himself. He needs to be encouraged to explore things. Give him a lot of educational toys that he can explore, act independently. There's a lot of energy in the home, a lot of activities going on. Maybe there may be some impatience or restlessness in there. Mm-hmm. There may be a lack of tenderness. Maybe we need to be aware of that to make sure that we're bringing in that Cancer nurturing thing. Mm. Sometimes, and this is what happens, I had Mars in the 4th house, was changes in residence, moving a lot. So you kind of feel uprooted all the time. So the child is kind of like viewed as a challenge.
Got it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what if you have Libra on the 4th house? This is totally different. Security here is built around peace and harmony. The child wants affection and tenderness in an environment where everything is beautiful, pleasing the senses, and pleasing relationships. Okay, so that's when you have Aries on the 4th and Libra on the 4th. Well, what about the 10th house? If you got Aries on the 10th house, what's important? Because you have to remember that this is also, parents teach their children what they believe are important goals in life. Okay, so if you have Aries on the 10th house, that means that the nurturing, the opposite of nurturing, the discipline is going to be around achievement. We want you to achieve. We want you to be competitive. We want you to get out there and be a leader. Show us your assertiveness. Okay, so disciplining might be could be kind of martial, kind of like dominating in conflicts, expressing anger with caustic remarks. So you have to make sure that when you're talking to your child, you don't get angry, you don't use sarcasm or nastering. If you have Libra on the 10th house, well, here discipline centers around fairness and cooperation. The child's expected to be polite and he's tasteful, He's able to see both sides of the argument. Good taste in the arts is appreciated, of course. And of course, our manners. Manners are important. We want our kids to be well behaved in public. Okay. And here you think about Libra as the judge. So the parent comes across as the judge of behavior, and but uses negotiation, okay, to resolve conflicts. Okay, that's good, and that's good. That's a good boundary.
Yeah, that is good. Bringing that in. Oh, that's good. Okay, so Taurus Scorpio involves issues around control and power. Self-indulgence versus self-control, or sensuality and materialism. So with Taurus on the 4th house, the security centers around affection expressed in sensual ways, tactile ways. So Taurus on the 4th is just really gonna want to be held and, touched. Also really needing that sense of comfort in the environment, low stress environment, wanting everything peaceful. The type of nurturing is patient and reliable and kind. The child may be viewed also as, my child. There could be that sense of like ownership, right? So with Scorpio on the 4th house, nurturing is tinged with strong emotions. So tension in the home can arise from a mysterious sense of fear. Maybe they think there's something to be afraid of, but there isn't. Or maybe there is a fear of, there's an overwhelm or a lot going on in the home emotionally. And so they feel overwhelmed with that, and then don't feel safe in their environment, or where to trust, who to trust. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the 10th house cusp, we have the approach to discipline with Taurus there. Again, achievement centered around that drive for success, right? The child can expect to be honest and reliable and hardworking. Discipline may be based on monetary reward. So again, like wanting to do something for a reward, I'll do this, and what will I get? Rules are stable and consistent. They can perceive them as like, yeah, that's a fair rule. That's a fair ask. I'll do that and I'll get this, right? So there's, patience, determination. Their manner, is well-mannered, similar to that Libra energy, since both of them are ruled by Venus. Similar to that Libra on the 10th that you had talked about, in terms of being polite and kind and, well presented, and also having that creative ability, having a sense of,
yeah, because it has some of those issues of Mars and Aries again.
Right.
Mars and Venus. I mean, you've
Mars
got
and Venus.
Mars is a sub-ruler of Scorpio, and Venus rules Taurus. So it's, again, identity issues come in here too.
Yeah. So those first and 7th, 2nd, 8th, those axes on this perceive much about the identity. So you're really what they're perceiving is helping them understand who they are. Big issues around identity. That makes sense. Right. Okay, cool. And then Scorpio on the 10th house, discipline here is, sort of maybe being overpowered. There's this, powerful sense of expectations or obedience, rules. There's a my way or the highway kind of feel.
Yeah, because it's a fixed sign too.
Yes, there's I feel it takes that sort of to the next level of like not just being kind and presenting and polite and mannered. It's like, I want things done a certain way. And failure can produce sarcasm in return. So you might get a child who rebels against that, who, doesn't want to do it that way. So then they become what you perceive as a challenging child, right? But they're really just learning to try and like break free from that feeling of being controlled, or having too much structure on them and not enough, ability to figure out who they are.
The other thing you can find about Scorpio is that some of the rules are hidden. They're not talked about.
Right. Expecting them to behave a certain way without really
Right.
informing them.
Right.
I
There are
see.
some subjects that are taboo, and there are rules that you know are there, like we're never supposed to mention sex. Okay, it's a hidden rule. You just don't do it, because as soon as you mention something about boys and girls, you know, you get this standoffishness or so. So you know that's something that's not to be talked about.
Got
So,
it. Yep. That makes sense. Yes. Yeah. So dealing with, again, and Mars, since that's a sub-ruler is Mars, and you have Pluto there, you're dealing with a lot of those issues, and also the anger that can come with that, not having the ability to talk about those things if you want to, and being taboo, and then rebelling,
Right.
or being secretive and hiding because you know you're not allowed to talk about something or ask questions. Or so then you've got these things that are hidden, and then a parent is surprised when they find out something because they haven't really maybe left room for exploration or for questions to be answered, or been really clear in allowing them to figure out who they are, even in these darker places.
Yeah.
Know?
So you have to be, if you have a Scorpio on the 10th with your child, you need to be as honest as you can.
Yeah.
Not keep things hidden. And if they bring something up, don't be shocked, and show them that you don't want to talk about it. You have to be able to be open enough to talk about things.
Right. And you may, as a parent, think that you're open, but if they have Scorpio on the 10th, they're going to perceive it as closed, or not, something they can broach, a subject they can broach, or a question they can ask, or something they can share. So it's important, I think, to always come back to the idea of this is a perception, that you may say, well, I always say you can tell me anything, but they may perceive you as someone is, yeah, she says that, but I also know because of my family and things, you don't talk about this, we don't say that, this is expected. Kids are very perceptive and very intuitive. So even if we say that,
right,
our words say one thing, our body language and our, structure of the home, or things we say to other people, can display another, or they can perceive as something else.
right.
And I think with this sort of mysterious, energy of Scorpio, where things are hidden, and it is this undercurrent energy, that's a really important thing to recognize, is that you may not.
Yeah, it's a lot more subtle.
It's much more subtle. It's not a way that you would naturally perceive yourself to be, So that's a really good one. Okay, how about
but you also need to, you can add more information to that by looking at the decadent that it's in, and also the ruler, what sign is the ruler in. Like, we don't like to look at things in isolation.
Exactly. So
sometimes people feel Scorpios threatening.
I know. You got to love up on the Scorpio, and they're just, it's super sensitivity, right? And needing to feel a sense of control. And I think that's also where, when you're dealing with Scorpio energy, is like, where can you give the child some control over their own environment, and where do they have to follow rules? Giving them a sense of empowering them in that way, as opposed to them always feeling overwhelmed or dominated or controlled. Where can you give them that space to feel they're in control of their own themselves?
I think if you're going to make up rules with an older child, you can also make them part of that process, so that they feel that they have something to say in there too.
Exactly, because there's there's definitely a positive side to Scorpio 10. It's not all negative. And you can look to where Mars and Pluto are in the chart, and what they're doing, and where, what the relationship of those two are. Like we said, nothing in isolation, but that's in a particular one that has such subtleties. It's really important to look at these other possible placements, and what other planets might be present in the 10th, and all of that, to help guide. Okay, let's go to Gemini Sag.
Oh, love Gemini Sag, because here the parenting issues are involved with interacting, communicating, reasoning, teaching. It's like the parent as teacher. Okay, talking to the child is, with Gemini, That's a preferred way to handle them, is through conversation and talking. Goals and how they're achieved, they become very important. Emotions are kind of filtered through the mental processes. Okay. So if you have Gemini in the fourth house, this is interesting. Security is built around the ability to be flexible, to be adaptable. Nurturing is playful. Sometimes it can be restless, with an emphasis on parent-child dialogue, because even when he's a baby, you're going to be talking to the baby. How do we like this? You like this food? You like this food? You like this shirt? The environment stresses, of course, books and educational toys and learning. So the child is seen as a learner, okay? And with Gemini in the third, sometimes you have an older sibling that also does part of the parenting,
Oh,
okay? You make the sibling part of raising this child or helping with the baby or whatever.
oh yeah.
You have Sagittarius on the fourth. What is that? Security is built around space and freedom. Nurturing is cheerful and it's optimistic, because Jupiter is, with an emphasis on learning. The home environment is probably cultural, philosophical, or could be religious. There's probably travel involved in the early life, because Jupiter loves to travel. He likes to explore different cultures. There's an interest in also nature and the outdoors, and of course animals too, because that all fits in with Sagittarius on the fourth. Probably have lots of plants in the room. Now, what happens when you have Gemini in the 10th house? Now we know that achievement here centers around using reason and logic, okay? Intelligence and learning. So you probably have a lot of expectations around your kid being a good student, because he's expected to be curious and flexible and articulate. And also you reward the kid for humor, for wit. When he says something funny, you just think that's wonderful. So he gets rewarded with a smile or a laugh or what have you. But the skills around reading and writing become really important. Your expectations that the child will be successful in school, of course, would be very important. Debate is important. When you want to talk to a kid about something, if you set a rule, you want to talk about, debate about it. We can debate this. Is this rule worn out? Now it doesn't fit. Maybe we need to change it. So since friendly Gemini is sociable, then probably limits would be limiting social events. No, we can't go to this because you didn't do your homework. Your homework has to be done before you can go and have fun. Okay. It's teaching them responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what if you have Sagittarius on the 10th house? Okay. Again, the achievement is going to be around learning and education. And it's going to be very idealistic. And then you expect the child to be energetic, outgoing, independent, and maybe athletic, because Jupiter has a lot to do with sports too. Honesty, straight talk, Sag is sometimes too blunt, is expected, and ignorance is not tolerated. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Of course you know. Parent acts as a teacher, okay, using communication and reason to present those rules. Okay, we're doing this because. Discipline here involves confinement, because freedom is so important. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Cancer and Capricorn are the natural rulers of the 4th and 10th. And here we're dealing with the natural issues of emotional security versus that authoritarian or authority and responsibility. Conditional versus unconditional love. Dependency can be an issue, either being too dependent on a parent or a parent being too dependent, so that the maturation or like they're growing up, leaving the home becomes more difficult. So yeah, that bonding, I can resonate with that. This is my son's cusp. He has Cancer and Capricorn. So with Cancer on the 4th, the nourishment is equated with nurturing. So it's very much, warm, affectionate, and protective. They perceive home, as, a secure, safe place. Family is very important. The family structure, early childhood experiences have great impacts on the child, and, memories. They hold on to memories of their early childhood. Also, emotional changes in mood can be strong. That safety and their whatever they love and nurture, like they hold on to those things. They're very have that sense of safety and security from mom is where they get most of that typically, or dad, whoever the caregiver is, right? Wherever you can look to where the moon is, obviously, and who, where that is and who the main caregiver is. And your child will bond, with whoever is there. Cancer, 4th house, is going to bond with the caregiver, whoever that is, whoever they spend the most time with, who is nurturing them and providing that safe environment, whether it's mom or dad, grandma, right? Grandpa.
I can say that about my grandson has this Capricorn Cancer. Okay. And his father is the one that took care of him. His father was at home, his mother was working. So the strongest bond he has is with his father, right?
Exactly.
And also the Saturn that rules the 10th is also in Cancer. So you can see that the rules are always presented with patience and a loving kind of way.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's a nice way of bringing those balanced in, because the Saturn is in Cancer. And
Right.
you can indicate that the father is the primary caregiver.
Right.
And so that bond is there. Excellent. So what if you have Capricorn on the 4th? The nurturing it can be a little bit more routine and structured and orderly, and less, emotional centered. This can feel like, a cool environment for the child. So they don't necessarily feel the loving support or the emotional closeness that they might need, or they perceive that it's not there. Whether this could be maybe the father or mother, whoever is not present or is working a lot, right? So there can be insecurity built around this nurturing process, which leads to a distrust of others, or, afraid of being close to others. So the child is seen as a responsibility, maybe, as opposed to, something to nurture and love. It's like, oh, I have to,
A love object.
a love object, and just, taking care of and providing. And there is, the positive side of Capricorn is, the mother or father, the person who's providing that structure, that most important, thinks that, they are providing what the child needs, primarily what they need from a structural or the routines or the basic primary life, saving needs of food, water, that kind of thing,
Right.
and the environment, a roof over their head. You're providing those things, and so they can feel provided for, but it's a less emotional connection, right, that they perceive they're getting in the home, or there's
Right.
rules, in the home that have to be followed in order to get love, or to feel, that they're good, or feel safe or nurtured, and that thing. They want to perceive they have to do things in a particular way, or follow certain rules, or meet certain expectations in order to make mom and dad happy. Right.
Right.
And so with Cancer on the 10th house, the discipline and achievement is centered around traditional family values. So with Cancer there at the 10th, they'd be like very much discipline, maybe loving, but inconsistent, right? Based on mood. So they can, the child can expect to be a little bit more sensitive and receptive to the home, emotionally expressive. They're going to express their feelings more freely. Consequences of breaking rules may take the form of withdrawing food or love. So they may either feel bad if they can't meet an expectation and feel like they're not loved or cared for or getting what they need, or just perceive mom as being somebody who's just inconsistent in terms of providing them what they need, right?
Right.
And
That's
then,
very funny because I found this with one of my clients. She had a mother who withheld food.
oh,
That was her way of punishing her. And guess what? She became a cook. She became a chef.
turn around, I'll show you. I love it. That's funny. That's really
Yeah.
funny. Well, it's true. It's like the things that we perceive in life, we, especially on the 10th house, we don't know what that's going to lead to in terms of our work in the world.
Right.
Right. So whatever we perceive, it's not negative or positive. It just is. And it is still part of their life journey. And if they perceive that, and that's the experience she had, she'd made a choice about how to, live her life from that experience. And she chose to go be a
Exactly.
chef,
Yeah.
So with Capricorn on the 10th house, which is the natural, place and ruler, it's naturally achievement and discipline centered around responsibility and obedience, hard work, doing what's expected, following the rules, and usually can be inflexible at times, like that you have to follow the rules, being a rule follower, right? The child is encouraged to be reliable and cautious, respectful, again, presenting yourself so that the family has a good reputation. If this is, the way we're seen as a family, your reflection on us. So by behaving a certain way, you hold up the reputation of the family, right?
Right.
And discipline is of an authoritarian type, which is more strict and uncompromising. So the parent can be seen as the lawgiver, and it's very much sort of like I have, my son has Capricorn on the 10th, Cancer on the 4th. So I am more of the nurturer and my husband is more of the lawgiver, the provider, more of the authoritarian, even though we absolutely switch those roles, especially with age, they have their bond, their unique bond. And they are both water signs. My husband's a Cancer, so they have that emotional bond. And then for me, it's helping me cut those, apron strings a little as he gets older, so he becomes more responsible and not afraid to leave home and be independent and self-sufficient. So that's something we've been aware of, knowing that's how we're perceived. It's like it's a nice family unit, but understanding where we need to make sure we're balancing so that he, isn't too bonded to mom and afraid to leave home, or too afraid to stand up and, be himself in the world, or make his, live by his own rules. And
where's his Saturn and Moon?
His Saturn is in Libra in the 6th retrograde, and then his moon.
Well, that's good because Libra, he's that's exalted in Libra. So.
Right, exactly. And then his moon is in Pisces in the 11th with the sun and a bunch of others. So he is self-regulated. He realizes and appreciates the value of rules and compromise. He is like peace. He is a peacemaker. He wants peace and harmony. And, that's where it's like wanting to lean into doing, things, or making sure he's taking care of his responsibilities to keep the peace in the family. Right. There's that element of wanting to keep peace and realizing that if I, I'm a part of this family, and if I hold up my end of the deal and bargain and taking care of things or handling my responsibilities, mom and dad are happy with me. Right. I'm a good person. But those are great foundational things, but it's also teaching him to be independent and think for himself and realize he doesn't have to be the peacemaker, but understand the value of being a part of a team or working together towards a goal and that kind of thing. And hard work and the importance of hard work, but not having to be where you're responsible and where you're not, I think is the lesson, and making sure, but he definitely perceives that by doing this and being a player in the family in that way, he keeps the peace and is, everything is copacetic and harmonized, and that's the way he likes it, right? That's where we all like it. I'm a Cancer rising, right? I like it that way too. My husband's a Cancer. We like a balanced, peaceful home. We don't fight. We don't, we work towards working our stuff out. So So that's good. So that's the natural, Cancer Capricorn axis, and being aware of that, how our kids perceive us in a very sort of traditional way with that axis. But a non-traditional way would be if you have Leo and Aquarius on that axis. So why don't you go into Leo Aquarius a little bit for that?
Yeah, with Leo Aquarius, you have issues around being close or having freedom in the relationship. Okay, the need to love and to be loved. That's all, Leo. Admiration and attention, that can be an issue with a parent. I've found quite often that either needing it or giving it, the child can be rewarded for their performance. In other words, if I want to be an athlete and I want my kid to be an athlete, then he's going to get rewarded every time he gives me a great performance, right? Okay. So it's all issues around freedom and responsibility, plus my identity, who I am. Okay. So if you have Leo on the 4th house, okay, then we know that here the nurturing is going to be warm. It's going to be affectionate. It's going to be playful, because Leo is always playful. And the environment is going to foster a creative expression. So having those kind of things around that is going to encourage the child's creativity. We want to encourage material and physical pleasures also, because it's a sensual sign. The sign here, the child is viewed as a object of pride. Okay, I need to be proud of my child, and so the child gets to be a performer, or they can find approval that way by being a great performer, right? Sometimes they're seen as an object of a projection. Okay, I didn't make it as an athlete, so I'm going to push my kid to be an athlete. I want them to fulfill my dream. Okay.
Okay.
So we have to be careful of that. Now with Aquarius on the 4th, Aquarius nurturing it can be a little detached. It can mean that there's other kids to be taken care of. So mom isn't always available when I want her. The caretaker could be absent. It could be that she's working. So the kid's in a nursery school or whatever.
Yes.
The child is treated more like a friend than a dependent child. We want to be pals with our kids, and I can talk to my pal, and my kid can be a pal to me, and I could be one to him. Okay. I remember there was a movie with I forgot who it was, but anyway, it was a whole thing where the teacher was saying, you can't always be a pal to your boys. You need to be a father too. I thought that was a great line. So freedom is going to be encouraged. The child's need to be free to move about and do what he wants to do. If you have Leo on the 10th house, then achievement and discipline center around the pride that comes from success. Oh, look, you got great grades. Isn't this wonderful? You need a reward. So we're going to reward anything that the kid comes home, he gets a medal or he gets a prize or for whatever. So he's expected to be self-confident, like Leos are supposed to be. We expect him to be honest. Leo does. We expect him to be proud of his family, proud of his home, etc. He should be proud too. Okay. But we don't want to push our unfilled dreams on him, right? It's Leo in the 10th house. Parents didn't make, as like I said, as athletes, and they try to push their kids to live out their dream, and that often doesn't work at all. Discipline is meted out with a powerful authority figure. That's the boss, the son, okay, Leo. And that person can often be arrogant and demanding. He wants you to perform. That's how you're going to get your approval. Loss of parental pride. Okay. Oh, you gotta be. I'm disappointed. Why wasn't it an A? You know,
Oh,
there's a pride. I need to feel that pride in everything that you do. So, and since Leo rules pleasure, we want to discipline by taking those pleasures away.
mm,
No, you can't play ball. You haven't done this or that. You have to do all of your things before you get to do fun things.
yes.
Now, if you have Aquarius on the 10th house, this is going to, again, bring in the whole idea of freedom and independence. I want my child to feel independent. He's expected to be inventive and creative and curious and idealistic. He's rewarded for being intelligent and friendly and a leader,
Mhm.
particularly in any kind of thing that has to do with humanitarian causes. He's rewarded for being different from the crowd. Okay, you're not like everybody else. You know you have these qualities. So the patient can become cold and distant when they are upset with the child. In other words, you're going to turn off that friendliness.
Mm, gotcha.
That happens sometimes. Okay, well, no, I don't want to talk about it. You know, and then you just feel like you've been isolated in some way. The
Mm,
child does. That's about it, I think.
gotcha. Yeah. So there's like an unpredictability there that they can perceive
Yeah.
in terms of what's expected,
Yes.
which can be confusing. I see.
Yes, because we know Aquarius has both Saturn and Uranus
Right.
parts.
Exactly. So you would be
So it's
looking
trying
at
to
those.
balance this need for freedom with with the same time responsibility. So they have to learn to balance those two things.
Right. And so you've got, three planets you're looking at there potentially. You're looking at the sun, you're looking at Saturn, and you're looking at Uranus. So you've got a trio there
Right.
that you're exploring to get a deeper sense of how
Yeah.
the child's perceiving this parental axis and perceiving you and your nurturing or your expectations.
Yeah.
That's with the case with everyone, but those are the three planets you'd be looking at to go deeper for this understanding the parental axis and how the child perceives you as parents. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So let's then dive into the Virgo Pisces axis. So these are issues around perfection or lack of it, codependent issues involving victim and rescuer. There can be an atmosphere of worry or negativity and dissatisfaction in the home, or a preoccupation with health, hygiene, maybe an overemphasis on religion, problems with those escape issues of alcoholism or drug addiction can also be present. So things to be aware of. So with the Virgo Pisces, we're also looking at a few planets. We're looking at Mercury as well as Jupiter and Neptune. So you would be looking at three different placements and how those are playing out to go deeper into understanding this parental axis. But to go into having Virgo on the 4th is nurturing stretches around orderly routines and schedules, environment and organized and clean. Caretakers can be consumed with worry and anxiety that affects the child. And, I can speak personally to this. I have Virgo on the 4th, and, my mom was definitely just worried all the time and working hard to provide. And it wasn't, didn't have time necessarily for all of like the more sensitive, being there to play and love and hug. And we always told each other we loved each other, but love is there, it's there, but I have to take care of business. I have to take care of getting food in your mouth, keep the roof over your head, and so the child can be seen also. It says, as an object of imperfection that requires practical service. So being of service to your family, and I, even having that for myself, that's the way I perceived is my mom did everything she could. She provided everything we needed. She was of service to the family. And I also do that for my family. I'm also of service to my family. So I come from that same perspective. So with Pisces there, and this also with Virgo on the 4th, there can be a perception of feeling not good enough, smart enough, or, being criticized perhaps, or not, because you're not getting the nurturing part, there can feel the sense of I'm not worthy of that, or that isn't, you don't feel a sense of security and safety, and there wasn't a bonding. There's not time to bond because you're just being of service, right?
Yes, and I can see that sometimes Virgo's funny. Sometimes it'll be just the opposite.
Mm.
It'll be just the opposite, where there won't be any order, where there won't be all of
yes.
these.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Neptune, Virgo's, because I grew up, I have Virgo on the 4th, and there was no order because I didn't have a mother. My father wasn't there. So there just wasn't any order or rules or,
Yeah.
I would leave everything go because my Mercury's in Leo. I wanted to play. So I would let everything go. The rules that I had, that I was supposed to do this or that, was at the last moment I'd hear his car drive up, and then I'd run into try to fix it all.
And I agree with that. I don't remember having a lot of rules. There were definitely, like, on Fridays, we always had to clean the house before the weekend. Like, I had chores that I had to get done, right, in order to have my weekend free and whatever. So we did have those kinds of things. But also, you're speaking to the dualistic nature of Gemini, right? In how you can have two different sides of this coin when you're dealing with Virgo or even Gemini, right? Is
exactly
feeling like there's all this order or there's no order, right? So you know what your home is like, how orderly or disorderly it is. And so just understanding that your child perceives that, right, one way or the other, right? All right, well, Pisces on the 4th house, nurturing involves sensitivity to the child's needs, but carelessness and confusing in responding. So boundaries are blurred, resulting in either codependency or, feeling lost, or the caregivers aren't present, or having even an idealistic view of the home and the family that isn't accurate. The environment can be uncertain, problems relating to, again, alcohol, maybe a parent who's struggling with an addiction or a mental issue, or, there's a sense of martyrdom. And so the child can perceive the home as not safe because there's so much uncertainty about who they can rely on and where they can depend, find their dependence or security from. Right, so the child can be confused. Right. Who's the caretaker, or the
yes. And if you've got a mom that's dealing with these problems, one of the kids learns how to be. I'm going to take care of her.
Yes, and then you can become, let me take care of mommy, or let me take care of this person, and then the child's becoming that nurse or that rescuer or that caretaker really early on. Which maybe can lead to them becoming a nurse. Right? Or result in them not feeling safe and secure within themselves, and knowing how then, what's expected of them in the world or in relationship to others. And so there can be this sense of loss, or feeling lost, or loneliness even, feeling lonely. Because there's so much going on, and there's no real structure and security. And so you can feel lonely and lost.
Right.
So then with Virgo on the 10th house, the achievement and discipline are colored with an idea of perfection. Like, so that Virgoian, like, the child is expected or is perceived to be expected to be helpful and useful, and very health conscious. So it's the way they might perceive the discipline you're trying to impart as critical, or you're finding fault in them and never completely satisfied with them, putting expectations, about work rather than play. And so this is, they can perceive the expectations to be kind of harsh, right? And consequences most likely will center around, pleasurable activities. You want to be able to do this, you have to do this. But there's a way to do that that isn't so harsh, maybe, or criticizing toward them. Right. And then with Pisces on the 10th, there's an ideas of achievement and discipline are inconsistent. Again, where there can be an attitude of, pessimism or, no real direction, again, absence of an authority figure or that guiding figure that helps understand the world and how it works and how to master things and how to achieve. The child's expected to be sensitive to others and been self-sacrificing maybe to the needs of the family. And discipline can have consequences like, this is done for your own good. That kind of like, I'm doing this, but it's for your own good.
I've often found that the people that have Pisces on the 10th have a parent who is a doctor or a minister or something where they're involved in the world helping other people. And so that becomes uppermost important. So you can tend to idealize that person too.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So you see that person as this like larger than life, parent that you could even admire, but is maybe not a realistic view of them. Right. Gotcha. And consequences vary, but they apply towards this inconsistency or sense of uncertainty, and there's like that ambiguity of Virgo, of Pisces, and that balance of Virgo Pisces is always kind of even hard to talk about because it's so mysterious and there's so many possibilities. So really looking toward that Mercury and then the Jupiter and Neptune are really going to help hone in on how this perception plays out. And it can be, I think, very different based on those placements. But ultimately, you're dealing with an inconsistency in one place and a sense of uncertainty, and then, or maybe a higher expectation of perfection or what's required. Right. This was really good. And I was jotting down some notes as we were going through it, because I think that the main things to remember with this are that the 4th house is that perceived nurturing or environment of too much or too little, right? And that the 10th house is the perceived expectations and rules based on the way they're perceiving them of what is authority and expectation for us. So that's really the crux of it, is how that axis informs us of how our children are perceiving us as parents, or perceiving how they're being raised and parented.
And a lot of that depends on the temperament.
So you understand the elements, the temperament, and then the planetary placements of those sign rulers, what they're doing. So this is where you can start and work out that temperament, the axis, the planets in place where they are and their relationship to one another or other planets. And you start to get that fuller, more holistic view of how the child is perceiving their parents and their early childhood environment in general. That's helping them inform, helping reflect back to them who they are and who they're throughout their evolution to figure out who they are going to be. Their own journey of becoming, right, starts with looking, like we say, modeling, right? We're role models for our kids. We want to be the example for the children. So they're watching that. They're always watching and perceiving.
And 2-year-olds are great imitators.
Right.
So a lot of what we do, they imitate.
Yes.
Everything that you do and say is teaching the child something.
Yes. And it's,
how do you handle anger? If you go around breaking dishes or throwing things or hammering on the table, And your child is going to say, well, this is what you do when you feel angry. So he'll be pounding on something, hopefully not someone.
Exactly. And that's, and I think it's easy to, to hear that and feel like, oh man, like every little word I say, everything I do is, they're learning. But again, it's having compassion that, with awareness, with knowledge comes power, and you do the best you can in the moment based on circumstances, and recognize they're on their own journey as well. And they're going to figure it out. The kids are going to be all right, regardless.
I think a lot of that comes through communication too. Like you can say, Mommy has a headache right now and I really need to have it quiet. And so go over to your friend's house rather than bringing them here. That kind of thing. You have to communicate what you're feeling, because otherwise they'll guess, and quite often they make the wrong decision, about what's going on.
Yeah. Mommies and daddies need their timeouts as well, and, you can't be afraid to take them, or when you have a moment, not being afraid to apologize.
Right.
When you have a moment and snap at your child and, get upset with your own behavior, to apologize, and because that is part of relationships, making mistakes, saying mean things or acting out, lashing out, misbehaving. I'll do better next time. We
also have to learn to forgive ourselves too.
Yes, that's what I mean, because it's a lot of pressure to be like, oh my gosh, every little thing I do and say is informing my child, and I'm not perfect, and in fact I'm far from it, and I keep, so it's easy to go down that fearful rabbit hole that you're screwing up your kid, because everything you say is informing him. Is that bad? Is that bad?
But he has a life path to follow too. So he has his life journey going around that whole chart. So, and his is different than yours, but he chose you as a parent for some reason.
Right.
He needed to have this kind of experience in his life. It's going to be part of his journey.
His own growth journey. Exactly. Well, this is good. And hopefully you've enjoyed us diving a little deeper into the parenting axis and that polarity and the signs and potential way of exploring a little deeper about how your child perceives you as a parent. So definitely send us in your questions about this topic if you'd like us to go deeper. Make sure to, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay in touch with us for the next one, and come join the Conscious Parenting with Astrology Facebook group if you want to chat more directly with us in between shows. So thank you again for being here, Cornelia. Thank you again for all your wisdom and insight, and for doing these great talks.
Thank you.
Of course, we will see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.